Hello, this is a guy who likes fanfiction and is too lazy to read, so here is Fire Emblem 3 Houses Only Love Can Hurt Like This Part 1 in audio form. Check the description for the links to the author. Chapter 61, and they all fall down. 2 days passed, and the golden deer and blue lions were waiting at the gates to leave for their mission. Lawrence was the first one there. He arrived an hour early just to show off how prepared he was for the fight. He walked up to Claude. So are you going to let me know what my role is in this fight? Or no? He stood with his hands on his hips. Your role? Claude raised an eyebrow. Your role is to be a soldier like the rest of us. Help us to defeat the dark mages, he said. Can you do that, or do you want a different job or something? Are we headed into an area where commoners may be present? I would like my chance to perform my sworn duty, if so. Lorne started marching along with the group. No. I don't think there's going to be any commoners there. It's in some sort of forestry area, Claude told him. No commoners living in the woods, I'd hope. Dimitri looked better than before, but still tired. He walked alongside Dudu. Sylvain was walking between Ingrid and Felix, not sure who he wanted to walk with, but Yuri caught up with him and whispered something to Sylvain. Ingrid glanced up at Yuri when he caught up, wondering what he said, but didn't pry. Raphael was taking huge bites of beef jerky as he walked, and Leonie was thinking about Geralt. Dudu was silent. He walked alongside Dimitri, keeping an eye out for any danger. Lawrence looked at Claude before announcing, Well, if any wandering travelers get caught in our tussle, I'll be sure to let them know not to fear because Lawrence Hellman Gloucester is here. He laughed heartily. Shut your trap, Lawrence, Leonie snapped. Lysithea high-fived Leonie. You can say that again. She sighed. Please take this mission seriously. It seems. I don't know different from our other missions. Lawrence frowned. You think I won't take this mission seriously? TCH. Who do you think I am? Listen well, dash. Leonie cut him off. Yeah. We know who you are, you repeat it every day. Every second, actually. Less chit-chat, more marching. We're off to a really serious battle, you know. The group continued marching until they reached a gloomy forest. There were no mages to be seen. Keep your eyes peeled, Byleth mumbled as they ventured farther in. Is that, Annette exclaimed, pointing to a clearing a few meters away, Tamash the librarian. Tamash was standing in the middle of the clearing, shakily walking towards a flower bed. What is Tamash doing out here all by himself? Dimitri asked, looking at Annette. Lawrence answered, perhaps the old man is losing his senses. Seems like the perfect opportunity for a young, blooming shoot like myself to step in to assist this wilting flower. Lawrence walked over to him. Tamash, good sir, may I be of assistance? This is hardly the environment for an elderly man such as yourself. Tamash spun around to face Lawrence. Oh. Hello, young man. I was just looking for a specific flower. He smiled. Something seemed off about his face, though. Lawrence didn't catch the abnormality. He bent over and gently caressed a flower that was blooming on the ground. Is it this one? It sure is a sight to behold, is it not? Not as lovely a sight as myself, though. He laughed, but it was a fake social laugh. Dimitri felt like something was off. He gripped his lance, not quite knowing why he felt compelled to fight. As soon as Lawrence bent down, a huge plume of deep purple magic blew Lawrence away. What the dash? Claude backed up, his house backing away with him. When the transformation was complete, Solon was standing there in the place Tamash was just standing. Dash, Lawrence screamed, but when the weird plume came, it cut his scream short as he was blown away. He landed on the ground, hard. I knew something was off, Dimitri muttered. Tell us what is going on here. Who really are you? He demanded, standing at the head of his house. Raphael looked around. Wait. Huh. What's going on here? Where's Tamash? I'm so confused. Solon chuckled. Now is my chance. You have all fallen into my trap. He snapped his fingers, and teleported further away on the battlefield. A bunch of soldiers, and the weird clown-looking girl who had taken over Monica's body back during the murders appeared instead. The girl laughed. It was Kronia. Ha! Just try to reach Solon. I guarantee you will not be able to get past me. And who's that? Did we pass through a carnival by accident? Raphael asked, scratching his head. Leonie sighed. That's the girl who took over Monica's body and killed all those people at our school. She's the one who attacked Marianne. The dark mages we were sent here to dispel, remember? She got ready to fight. You think you can defeat all of us? You're outnumbered. Lawrence got up and began brushing off his pants. Dmitri ran forward without thinking, letting out a fierce grunt of effort as he swung at Kronia. Kronia backflipped. Nice try. A long line of soldiers emerged from behind her. Byleth ran up beside Dmitri. I'm with you, she exclaimed. Don't back down. I won't stop until we make sure they're all defeated. They're responsible for the tragedy at Remire village. They killed so many innocents. I can't let them get away with that. Dmitri ferociously stabbed at Kronia. Kronia got schemed across the side with his lance. Ow! She exclaimed. I wasn't expecting you to land a hit. She threw a blade at Dmitri. Ash started firing arrows at one of the mages. I'm going to need some support. Ignatz ran over to Ash. I've got you. The blade schemed Dmitri's cheek, and blood squirted out from the impact. He didn't seem to care, because he kept fighting. You will never get away with this. What is your objective? He scrambled to get closer, then swing again as hard as he could. He wasn't aware of his surroundings. Kronia and Dmitri were going at it for a while, until Kronia finally yielded. Stop. Enough! She exclaimed. Suddenly, her wounds closed up. She had been healed. Byleth frowned. Seriously? What's going on? Claude realized the two houses were struggling pretty badly against the mages. He aimed his bow at Kronia, and let the arrow fly. It whizzed right between Byleth and Dmitri, hitting Kronia in the shoulder. Now, Dmitri! Byleth shouted. Dmitri frowned. What the? He paused, catching his breath. Who healed her? We have to find their healers and take them out if we want to make any progress. He watched Claude take a shot, then charged at Kronia. Time to put an end to your unjust slaughter. Dmitri stabbed her through the shoulder, sending her tumbling backwards. Solon shouted, Enough, Kronia. He teleported beside her. Come. I need your life. If all fails, you will be resurrected. He picked her up and stabbed her through the chest with dark magic. Kronia screamed, and the dark mages began to scramble away from Solon. What the? Claude ran over to Dmitri and Byleth. Dmitri was about to try and stab her again, but noticed that something strange was going on. I don't know what's going on. But something isn't right. Why are they all running away? If I were you, I'd get out of his way. Yuri called out, dealing with a few enemies as he spoke. Claude started to back up. See, come on. He grabbed Dmitri's wrist. Suddenly, a strange portal appeared where Kronia once was. Byleth gasped, turning around and chasing after Claude and Dmitri. Solon laughed, Ha! There is no escape. He shouted. Purple smoke swirled into the air, grabbing Byleth and pulling her towards the portal. Even the Fellstar cannot escape. Solon shouted. Professor! Dmitri lunged forward and grabbed onto her arm, trying to pull her away from the dark vortex. He pulled with all his might, but the dark magic was way too strong for him. No. Byleth slipped out of his grasp, and he looked down at his hands before looking back up. Where is she? He glared at Solon and shouted, What have you done? Byleth reached her arm out towards Claude and Dmitri. Help! She exclaimed, but before Claude could grab her hand, she was pulled into the portal. It closed. And then there was silence. Teach! Claude shouted. What just happened? Where is she? Solon replied, She will be facing a fate even worse than death in the darkness of Zaharas. He cackled. Claude stumbled backwards a bit. No. Solon just laughed at him. A massive horde of mages and soldiers was summoned, and they immediately surrounded the blue lions and golden deer. Claude was in a bit of a panic, staring at the spot where Byleth had disappeared. Annette started backing up, forming a small back-to-back circle with Mercedes and Ash. "This is scary," she mumbled. Solon laughed. "We have you surrounded. Surrender. Drop your weapons. Take us to the church. We must force the Archbishop to surrender." Claude drew his bow, aiming straight at Solon. "Stop," he shouted, causing the horde of soldiers to begin charging magic. Solon looked at Claude, narrowing his eyes. "Pardon." Claude shook his head, a lump in his throat. "We're not going to just give up like this. Not after you so selfishly took our professor's life." Solon laughed again. "There's nothing you can do. She's gone. There is no salvation." Claude replied, "We're not giving up. We can't. Please, keep fighting with me. We can't lose Gareg Mach like this." He glanced at his classmates. Dimitri noticed how shaken Claude was. It was strange to hear him all choked up, but he didn't let that deter him. He nodded in understanding. "I will never give up, and I will avenge the professor. I will dole out vengeance and serve justice for all the innocent lives you stole." He stayed close behind Didu. Hilda gripped her axe tightly, speaking up. "Claude is right. Come on, you guys. We're not beat yet." "Right, Marianne." Marianne nodded. "Why yes. I believe the goddess will send the professor back to us." She clasped her hands together. Ignatz linked his arm with Marianne's protectively. "We will not lose to a being so ugly as you." Leonie grimaced. "I'm going to make Captain Gerald proud. After all these years, now is the time to prove to him that I'm turning into the mercenary he's always wanted me to be. He'd want me to protect his kid, and I will do whatever it takes." Lysithea began charging up her own magic. "Are you afraid of my dark spikes, T?" "You should be." Lawrence stood heroically next to his housemates, a ball of magic forming above his palm. "You think we are going to back down just because you banished our professor to some desolate realm? Well, think again. I am prepared to die fighting for my house, to die fighting in order to bring back the professor we all cherish so deeply. It is a noble's duty to make things right." Raphael punched his palm once. "I may not be the smart one here, but my fists can really teach you a lesson. Nobody steals our teacher away without dealing with my muscles." The mages were laughing still. Claude looked over at Dimitri, his eyes pleading for him to not give up. Didu stood protectively in front of Dimitri. "I will defend you all to my dying breath. I know that is what His Highness would fight for as well." Annette forced a smile. "Ash, Merci, and I are with you guys all the way. Right guys?" Mercedes nodded. "Right Annie." Ash raised his voice. "I may be young, but I am on my way to becoming a valiant, virtuous knight. And I am going to protect all these people who I love so dearly." He made a determined fist, exchanging a glance with Annette and Mercedes. Ingrid took a deep breath. "We've made it this far, we will never bow down to the likes of you." Sylvain flourished his lance. He remembered how to do it from when Ingrid taught him. "I might sound cocky when I say this, but I'm gonna take you down, and you're not even gonna have time to see it coming." Felix stood directly beside Didu. "I don't care how powerful you are, you will not lay a hand on His Highness." He looked at Dimitri for a brief moment, as if promising his loyalty. Constance and Happy began charging their magic, looking around them at the circle of mages. "See!" Claude exclaimed, "you may have us surrounded, but that doesn't mean you've won." Without warning, he let his arrow fly. Solon blocked it with a magic shield, and on command, the dark mages began raining magic down on the group. The two houses began brutally fighting the mages. Claude cried out a few times, overcome by soldiers. It was clear the two houses were overpowered. Dimitri was trying to get Claude to help him, but couldn't. He was successfully fighting off a horde, but was slowly overcome. Hilda came to his rescue since Dimitri was struggling, slicing at one of the soldiers. She screamed as one jumped onto her back, and stabbed her in the shoulder, then again in the lower back, leaving her on the ground, crying. Claude fended off Hilda as best he could. "Hilda!" He screamed in agony, watching as she fell to the floor. Marianne and Ignatz were fighting side by side. Ignatz shouted, "Raphael! We could use some help over here." Raphael went to go help his friends. "Look out!" he exclaimed, but ran straight into a soldier and held his face in pain as he fell to the ground, knocked out cold. He fell right in front of Ignatz, his nose gushing. Ignatz gasped. "Raphael, no!" He shot the soldier, and his attention was grabbed by a large shadow over his and Marianne's head. They looked up to see a large meteor crash down right on top of them. They were thrown onto the ground, their bodies burning from the flames. Lysithea and Lawrence were overtaken by mages. Lawrence fiercely shot magic at one of the mages, but it did absolutely no damage. He stood protectively in front of Lysithea, looking back at her. "Are you okay?" he asked, but as soon as he looked back, Anania's arrow attack exploded right on top of him and Lysithea, sending them flying. Leonie was fiercely trying to make her way to her fallen comrades. "No! Stop this!" she shouted, but couldn't go further because of the gash in her leg. She screamed and curled up, holding tightly onto a good luck charm that she got from Geralt. She wouldn't let go of it. Solon cackled. And down they fall. One by one. He looked at Claude. "We were going to take you alive, but it looks to me like you'd rather die." Claude continued to fight Solon one-on-one. Constance, Happy, Yuri, and Balthus were fighting a group of 9 dark mages. The enemy mages conjured up a huge bolt of lightning and struck the center of the ground in between the ashen wolves, charring their clothes and sending them spiraling onto the ground hard. Happy slammed hard into Yuri's body, groaning in pain. Yuri let out a grunt when Happy bashed into him, sustaining horrible burns from the lightning. Balthus landed directly on top of Constance when the magic hit, probably crushing her since he was so heavy. Annette and Mercedes were fighting as hard as they could to protect Ash. A soldier slipped through their defenses, though, and stabbed a blade through Ash's shoulder. "Ash, no!" Annette cried out, killing the soldier with wind magic. Before she could do anything else, another soldier took his place and slashed her across the face, sending her right onto the ground beside Ash. Mercedes screamed as she was stabbed in the leg, and then her other leg. She collapsed right beside Ash and Annette. Annette shakily grabbed Ash and Mercedes' hands. I can't see. Guys, I'm so scared." she whimpered. Blood was pouring from her eyes, which had a large gash right over her eyelids. He crawled over to Annette and tried to comfort her, but he was sobbing too hard and sounded really scared. I'm here. Annette, don't cry, we'll be okay," he was trembling. It's okay, Annie, we're right here with you," Mercedes cried. "Oh, Annie." "Ash," she sniffled. "I will always cherish the time we spent together at the monastery." She didn't want to admit it, but it was time for them to give up. Felix watched as a horde of soldiers closed in on Sylvian and Ingrid. He glanced at Dimitri, then bolted left, taking down a good chunk of soldiers to reach his friends. A soldier tackled Ingrid to the ground, sending her lance tumbling away. She cried out in fear as she pushed up on the soldier's arm, attempting to evade the blade he had at her throat. Felix kicked the soldier away from Ingrid, and wasn't able to help Sylvian in time, who was stabbed directly where his old wound was. Ingrid scrambled to her feet. "Thank you, Felix. We need to help Sylvain," she screamed in horror as she watched Felix get stabbed directly through the back. He fell to his knees, slowly sinking down beside Sylvain. Ingrid hurried over to them, only to be slashed across her back and thrown to the ground by a soldier, who kicked her in the side a few times. She curled up, sobbing beside her 2 best friends. Sylvain couldn't move. He just stared back at Felix as well, trying to mouth something, but couldn't quite form it right. Felix was unable to move. It was uncertain if he was even still alive or not. He lay there, facing Sylvain. A small trail of blood trickled from his lips. He blinked slowly. Ingrid grabbed onto Sylvain's ankle with the last of her strength. She didn't say anything, only made sure he could feel her touch. Didu protected Dimitri as best as he possibly could, but they were severely overwhelmed. Claude looked over at them. "They need my help," he breathed, noticing that Didu and Dimitri were the only ones still standing. Didu took a mage down, and another. Just as he spun around to kill another, a barbarian sunk his axe directly into Didu's stomach. He coughed, blood dripping from his lips. His hands shook as his axe clattered to the ground, his body following soon after. Didu's vision blurred in and out of focus as he watched Dmitri battle. Overwhelmed, Dmitri had to rely on Didu, but gasped in horror as he watched his partner get stabbed through the stomach. Didu. He suddenly lost all sense and dropped his weapon, trying to get to him. Didu. I'll make them pay, I will avenge you, I swear arg. He cried out as he was pierced through the shoulder, falling right next to Didu. He saw what happened to Claude out of the corner of his eye, and he tried to get up, but couldn't. He was too hurt. Didu stared into Dmitri's eyes. He raised a shaky hand, and laid it to rest on Dmitri's cheek. Your Highness. I'm so sorry, he sputtered, his breathing shallow. I'm so sorry. But even in death, you are unimaginably beautiful. Dmitri placed his hand on top of Didu's. At least, we will enter the afterlife together, his voice was weak. Claude shouted, Dmitri. No. God. Solon. He turned back to the ugly shriveled man and continued to fight him. He was no match for Solon, who created a blade of dark mass and stabbed Claude through the stomach. He laughed maliciously, watching as Claude crumpled to the floor. The dark mages formed a circle around the students again. Solon cheered. Ha! How beautiful! They won't last another 5 minutes like this. How wonderful that they would invite death in so easily. They're all dying. All of them. Ha ha ha. The only sound that could be heard came from the students, sobbing as they faced death, and Solon, who cackled as he watched. Chapter 62, A Second Chance. Suddenly, a bright light emitted throughout the area. Ash thought it was the goddess opening up heaven for him. Didu slowly shifted his gaze upwards, squinting against the light. Your Highness, he sputtered, attempting to direct him to look at the light. Dmitri's eyes flickered up towards the sky. What is that? He squinted. No. Solon screamed, no. How could this be? His voice was cut off by a sickening thunk. The professor had returned. Her hair was an enamoring green, and she was emitting a radiant, holy light. She clasped her hands together. Everyone. Get up. I still need you, she exclaimed, hovering in the air above her students. The students' wounds slowly began to close up. Life entered their broken bodies. The mages backed away in fear. Byleth closed her eyes, focusing her healing magic as hard as she could. Dmitri sat up once the life was breathed back into him, feeling his shoulder. He couldn't believe that he had fully healed, and immediately checked on Didu. Didu. He helped him sit up. Are you okay? Didu. Dmitri saw that he was healed, but needed to hear an answer. He didn't want to fight unless he knew Didu was okay. Didu stood tall. I am okay, Your Highness. We're all right, he assured him. Felix suddenly coughed and sputtered, scrambling into a sitting position. We're okay, he said in disbelief. Ingrid tackled Sylvain and Felix in a hug upon realizing that they were no longer going to die. Sylvain sat up, staring in disbelief at Felix, but Ingrid's hug cut him off and he hugged both of them back at the same time, overflowing with joy. You guys. He squeezed his eyes shut tightly, and a few tears leaked out. Felix returned the hug, breathing heavily into Ingrid's shoulder. He still didn't seem to have words for this moment. Ingrid told them, I was so scared. I wasn't ready to lose you guys. Claude rose to his feet. Everyone. Let's finish this. He was overjoyed by the revival, and seeing the professor again was enough to pull him to his feet. We have the upper hand now. Dmitri slowly rose to his feet, looking at Claude. Let's finish this. The students worked together to overcome the mages easily this time, thanks to Byleth's newfound power. Once all of the mages were gone, Byleth hovered slowly to the ground and landed safely on her feet. My students, is everyone all right? She cried. Ash seemed confused. Huh. He looked around. I'm still on Earth, with all my friends. His tears of fear turned into tears of joy, and he grabbed Mercedes and Annette's hands as he stood up. Annette, Ash, and Mercedes jumped around in a happy circle while holding hands. The two classes gathered around Byleth. Claude slowly walked up to her. Your hair? What happened? You look incredible. His mouth was open slightly, and he stared in awe at the professor. Byleth frowned. I don't really know. I can explain everything later. All that matters is that you're all safe. You all fought so bravely in my absence. Constance spoke up. What a relief, knowing we don't have to face Solon again. Felix still didn't let go of Sylvain and Ingrid. He couldn't. Sylvain said quietly to the two of them, I've come so close to losing my life and losing you two in the past 2 months. I've never been the most devout guy, but I'm praying that nothing like this happens ever again. Dida was standing intensely close to Dimitri. Now that everyone had faced a near-death experience, they all didn't want to leave the sides of their loved ones. Dimitri took the opportunity to grab Dida's hand. He chose this time to do that because it wasn't out of place for this moment. Lawrence walked up to Byleth. How unusual. I am intrigued. Your appearance has changed during your absence, and you seem to have gained immense, otherworldly strength after quite literally disappearing from the face of Fodlan. Ash always liked to put in his 2 cents. With the professor and her new power, there's no way we could ever lose again. Dimitri looked around. Have we taken them all out? Are we certain that there are none of them left? Byleth nodded. They're gone. We're safe now. She sighed deeply. Come here you guys. The 2 houses huddled for one big group hug. Once the students had calmed down, Byleth gently said, let's return home. To the monastery. They left the forest and began walking back towards the monastery. Lawrence, Lysithea said. She approached him as they walked. Lawrence rubbed his arm where he had some light burns from the last of the mages. Ah, he moved his hand away quickly, then turned to Lysithea. You called? Yes. Lysithea looked off to the side, as if embarrassed. I just wanted to thank you. Before we all almost died, you protected me. You risked your life to save me. She looked at him. So, thank you. So much. I am grateful. I didn't expect that of you. Didn't expect that from. Lawrence put his hand on his chest and looked at her like she was crazy. Dear Lysithea. If you know the first thing about me, it is that I never pass up a chance to help a comrade, commoners and nobles alike. Your house may be one of the smaller ones of the Alliance, but that is all the reason more to save you. You cannot grow up to be a capable leader if you are dead. He obviously didn't know Lysithea's underlying secret. She nodded slightly. Yes. I suppose you're right. She got very quiet after that, walking shoulder to shoulder with him, but more like shoulder to arm cause he was taller. Lawrence looked down at her, raising an eyebrow because he wondered why she was walking so close to him, but he didn't question her. He was glad to be in her company. The group finally returned back to the monastery. Byleth and Claude immediately reported the outcome to Rhea. Everyone was insanely shooken up, even knowing they were safe at home. Byleth's healing magic did a lot, but didn't take away the pain completely. Many people went to relax. Even though they had just fought, Felix was already in the training area again. He didn't take time to rest. Ingrid was with him, begging for him to stop and take a break. Felix, stop. Ingrid pleaded, you're only going to make yourself worse. Stop. She grabbed his arm, and he slowly lowered it. After returning home, Sylvain freshened up. He was going to grab a meal in the dining hall, but instead, he skipped it. He left his room, then started marching toward the training area where Felix and Ingrid were. He was frowning, walking straight toward Felix even though he was in the middle of training. Breathing heavily, Felix turned and faced Sylvain, just watching as he marched towards him. Chapter 63, I missed you. Sylvain took a quick look to see who was there, and didn't see anyone besides Felix or Ingrid. He didn't say anything, he just marched straight up to Felix and held onto the sides of his face, pulling him into a kiss. He didn't care that it was right in front of Ingrid, it was something he needed to do. Felix stood there for a moment before dropping his sword and wrapping his arms around Sylvain. He was all sweaty, but hoped Sylvain wouldn't mind. Oh my, Ingrid covered her eyes with her hands, acting like she wasn't allowed to see. Sylvain obviously didn't care about the sweat. He just pulled Felix closer and kissed him more. He didn't notice that Ingrid was covering her eyes, even as he pulled his head away. He kept his hands on the sides of Felix's face. I didn't die when I was stabbed, I died when I saw the life leave your eyes. Life is too short not to spend it with the ones you love, so, this is something I had to do. Sylvain, Felix mumbled, his eyes searching his face for any sign of deceit. Can we go back to the way things used to be? He begged. Please. I can't live like this anymore. I can't do it. Sylvain shook his head, then went back to kissing Felix. He spoke between kisses, because apparently he couldn't handle not kissing him or being more than an inch away. I'm sorry I even ended things. I thought playing it safe would be best for us, but now that I think about it, this is a risk I am willing to take. It's worth it. Felix pulled away. I've been waiting to hear you say this, he shook his head. It took you long enough. Ingrid peeked through her fingers. Are you guys done? I know. And I'll own that it was my mistake. I just wanted us to be safe. But I think I care more about making the most of our time together than waiting and risking losing you before that, Sylvain said. I'm sorry. Really? I hope we can just pick up right where we left off. Ingrid peeked through her fingers. Are you guys done? Sylvain leaned in to kiss Felix again, but stopped because Ingrid interrupted. No. If our love bothers you, you can leave. It's just a little kissing. Nothing you haven't seen before. Felix grabbed Sylvain's face mid-sentence and pulled him into another kiss. Geez, Ingrid scoffed, putting her hands on her hips. Don't put words in my mouth, I didn't say it bothered me. Sylvain pulled his head back for a moment to answer Ingrid. I was teasing you. But what were you covering your eyes for? He had to stop because Felix kissed him. He couldn't help but smile, which probably made it hard to kiss. He was just way too happy to have Felix back, even though he was the one who broke up with him in the first place. Guess I'm back to being the third wheel then, Ingrid said with a small sigh. I'm happy for you guys. Carry on. She waved to them and walked out of the training grounds. Sylvain moved his head away again to call back to Ingrid. The front two wheels can't function without that back third one, just remember that. He watched her for a little bit, then turned back to Felix again. After a while he suddenly stopped. Okay, as much as I want to keep doing this, I don't want another church wall scenario. Oh. Right, Felix said, taking a few steps back. You're right. The church wall was pretty bad. He chuckled slightly. I'm sorry. I'm happy, I guess. He said it as if he was embarrassed to admit it. You have every right to be happy. I'm happy. I'm seriously elated beyond words over this. I'm never making that mistake ever again. Sylvain held Felix around the torso and pulled him close. And if I do, I'd never be able to forgive myself. It wasn't your mistake, it was mutual. Felix paused. Sort of. He wrapped one of his arms around Sylvain. It won't happen again. I can assure you. Hey, what do you say to checking out Abyss now? Sure. I think that would be smart, Sylvain said with a nod. Actually, I've been there already. And I would have brought you, but yeah. Anyway, I should take you with me sometime. Just so we can get a feel for the place. And, maybe, a little something else when we're not at risk of getting caught. He raised his eyebrows. Yes, but why did you go there without me? Felix asked. You said you've spoken to Yuri about it, but every time I ask, you avoid the question. You said we weren't ready for Abyss. He started walking along with him, seeming offended. I mean, yeah. We've talked, not a lot, but we've talked. Sylvain's shoulder brushed against Felix's as they walked, and he kicked a pebble across the ground. He said we're welcome down there anytime. Maybe we should start taking advantage of that? I mean, it's pretty secluded down there. Nobody from up here even cares to make the trip down there. It's a little sketchy, but you get used to it. What? Just how many times have you been down there without me that you're already used to it? Felix folded his arms, inching away from him slightly. Wait. What? Oh, did I say I've been down there? That's just what Yuri told me. From the times we talked. Sylvain blinked. He's just really good at describing the place, you know? Makes you feel like you're really down there. He cleared his throat. You're lying to me? Felix stopped walking. I know you better than you think, Sylvain. Why are you lying to me? He sounded suspicious. Sylvain stopped walking along with him and sighed. Okay. Okay, I'm sorry. I've been there a few times, but I didn't want to admit it cause I didn't want you to think I was making plans without you and such, okay? But I won't do it again. Next time I go, I'll bring you with me, and we can talk to Yuri together. He seemed a little paranoid. Felix sighed. I don't get why you didn't tell me that in the first place. He said, I appreciate you going down there to make sure it's a safe place for me and you, but I love you, so that means I expect the truth and nothing but the truth from you. You understand me? Sylvain stared at Felix, then nodded. Yeah. I understand. I'm sorry, Felix. I love you too. He reached out and touched the back of his hand, not holding it because they were in a spot where they were at risk of getting caught. Felix nodded. Thank you, he said with a small sigh as they continued walking. Where is this place anyways? I've never seen the entrance before. Sylvain let out a quiet sigh, the tension in his shoulders dropping after that moment passed. He said, there's an entrance right by the lower level dorms if you know where it's at, it can be pretty useful if you want to stay out of sight. Again Yuri's words, not mine. He said that was the easiest way in. Right. Okay. Felix nodded, following Sylvain towards the dorms. And you're sure we have zero chance of getting caught down there? He asked again. Maybe not zero, but like, a 10% chance. As long as we don't get caught sneaking off together, we'll be fine. Sylvain frowned. These last 3 weeks have been brutal. Really, getting caught now seems much better than having to spend almost a whole month away from you. It really does, Felix responded. And our fathers already know. So really, no more damage can be done. But hey. I need you to promise me something. Okay? Seriously. Sylvain faced Felix, standing right in front of the abyss wall. If anything ever happens to us, like, if we somehow split up for some impossible circumstance, don't you dare hurt yourself again because of it, okay? What you did at the party. I could barely stand to watch. It broke my heart. I didn't hurt myself, Felix said. I was just being irresponsible. That's all. He hugged himself, nervously. It was all I could do to keep my mind off you. Though all it did was make me want you more. Well, you could have hurt yourself. So, let's shake on it. Right now neither of us is allowed to hurt ourselves just because we miss the other. Deal. He stuck out his hand, but then tucked it behind his back. No actually. Let's kiss on it. Kman, I know you want to. He smiled, trying to lighten the mood. Felix laughed. Sylvain. We're going to Abyss to not get caught doing that. And anyways, making a deal on it would mean that we'd split in the future. And I don't want that. So no deal. Fine. That's not what I meant, but still. Sylvain smiled, then stole a quick kiss from Felix's cheek. All right. Let's go check this place out. Let's see if there are any places where we can have complete solitude. He took Felix by the arm and started heading to Abyss. Balthus was passing by. Oh. Hey. What's up you guys? Oh, Sylvain, Yuri was looking for you. He said you left your... He Balthus. Sylvain nervously cut him off. No worries. We're here for something else. Good to see ya. Bye now. He did a little wave, then briskly walked away with Felix. He quickly tried to deter Felix. There are a lot of cats down here. You'll like that. Felix narrowed his eyes, but didn't say anything. He was still pretty suspicious from their conversation before. He was excited about the cats, though. As they passed through the main street, a bunch of cats tailed them, begging for food even though they didn't have any. Constance passed by them. Oh. Sylvain again. Are you here for more? Wait, what? Felix. She pointed to them. Sylvain smiled, waiting to see Felix's reaction, but Constance came over and distracted him from it. More what? He looked at her, confused as to why she probably somehow knew about his affair, but tried to hide his nervousness. Felix and I are just here for a visit, that's all. I wanted to show him the cats. See. He stooped down and pet one for a few seconds. Sylvain, no. Constance swatted his hand away. Yuri is allergic. You know you cannot be doing things like that. She scolded. Felix frowned, looking between Constance and Sylvain. Is there something wrong? He asked again. How was I supposed to know that? Sylvain recoiled his hand, and the cat ran away. He stood up and looked at Felix. Nothing's wrong. The people of Abyss are just, they're an odd bunch, I'll tell you that. Haha. Looks like we're gonna end up that way too if we end up sticking around, am I right? He nudged him playfully. Felix didn't answer. He just sighed. Constance looked at the two of them. Okay then. I apologize for any confusion I may have caused. She skipped away. Yeah. Bye. Sylvain gave her a little wave, then kept walking with Felix. Seriously. They're an odd bunch down here. Don't let that stop you from hiding out down here with me, though. Okay. He told him. They made it to the halls, where Sylvain seemed to know exactly where to go. He tried to make it look like he had to think about it, but he knew the exact way to Yuri's quarters. You really know your way around. The people down here seem to know you well. Felix spoke slowly. As they turned a corner, Happy collided straight into Sylvain. Whoa, hey, watch where you're going, she exclaimed, rubbing her forehead. Oh. Sylvain. Hey. She waved to him. Yuri was looking for you, actually. I'm sure that's what you're down here for anyways. Have fun. She walked past them. Felix stopped walking. Sylvain was looking back at Felix as he spoke. It's not that hard to learn the way. And I guess I'm just popular, huh? What can I say? He stopped talking when he bumped into Happy. Whoa. Sorry about that. I wasn't looking. He tried walking past her, but her comment made him wince. His heart skipped a beat, and he acted like she didn't say anything weird, hoping Felix wouldn't notice. Felix, you coming? He turned, standing in front of Yuri's door. He didn't even knock. Yuri opened the door, sticking his head out. He wasn't expecting to see Felix, but nothing on his face changed to signal he was caught off guard. Hey, you two. Finally decided to get a room. No, Felix responded, folding his arms. In all honesty, Sylvain, I'm really not in the mood right now. He looked Sylvain in the eyes. What? Oh come on Felix, we came all this way. And, you were the one asking about it in the first place. Don't you at least want to talk to Yuri about getting our own place down here? He stared back at Felix, not saying anything. Yuri just stood in the doorway, wondering if they were going to come in to talk or not. Okay. Fine, Felix said, shouldering Sylvain roughly as he passed. He walked into Yuri's room, but stood with his back to the door. Hey, Sylvain frowned, getting knocked back a little. He understood Felix's frustration, but didn't admit anything. He walked in behind Felix, but quickly moved over to the side and kicked something behind the garbage can with his foot. Yuri stood near his desk. So? Got a feel for the place so far? Let me tell you, your secret is safe down here, that's for sure. Yeah. I'm sure it is, Felix said softly, refusing to look at Sylvain. He didn't notice him kick anything behind the garbage can. Can you just give us a place to go? Where we won't be bothered. What does it look like I'm doing? There's a spare room a few doors down. The room is a bit of a dump right now, but if you're going to be using it frequently, I'm sure you two will tidy it up real nice. Yuri said, the bed's a little squeaky, but the walls are thick. So you needn't worry. He shrugged. I hope this place works out for you guys while there's nowhere for you to go on the surface. It must have been pretty rough up there, having to dodge eyes every which way. Sylvain nodded. Yeah, you can say that again. Felix didn't respond. He looked over at Sylvain. Do you want to go look at the room or not? He asked with a small frown. We didn't come down here to make small talk. Actually, we didn't come down here to do any talking at all. If you know what I mean, haha. Again, Sylvain was joking to try and distract Felix. We should probably go. But, thanks Yuri. We just wanted to make sure it was okay with you first. You know, since you're the boss here and everything, he started backing up, Ulrich, Felix and I are gonna head out so, yeah. He opened the door. Alright, Yuri said, looking at the two of them. Have a good time, yeah. Don't tell us what to do, Felix snapped as the two of them exited the room. Felix grabbed Sylvain's wrist and yanked him into the empty room, closing the door behind him. Are you serious? He said as soon as the door was closed. Hey, watch it. That's my sore wrist. The one that got stabbed through, remember? Sylvain frowned, rubbing his wrist once they made it into the room. Serious about what? Staying down here for a while? If that's what you mean, then yeah. He walked toward him. Let's just start making out, okay? That's what we came here for. He didn't want to argue, so he put his hands on Felix's shoulders and puckered his lips. Stop it. Get your hands off me, Felix said, holding his hand out in front of Sylvain's face to stop him. I'm not stupid. You've been meeting girls down here. Sylvain stood back with his mouth slightly parted, staring at Felix. He shook his head. What? No. No, you've got it all wrong. What makes you think that? Why would I be doing that? Yeah, that's what the old me would have done, but you changed me, Felix. No more girls for me. I'm done. I have you, and that's what matters. Okay. Look, you know your way around here, Constance was very familiar with you. And Balthus said you left something down here, and happy, Felix sighed. Stop playing dumb with me. Stop. He said, I get it. You went back to your old ways. I guess I just wasn't enough for you. How many girls have you met down here? Tell me. He looked at him again. Or I'll go and ask around. Someone's gotta know the answer. No. I haven't. They're called old ways for a reason. I'm done with that. I'm with you now, Felix. I didn't break up with you just so I could meet girls down here. I've met 0 girls down here. I swear 0. How many times do I have to say it for you to believe me? Have you really that little faith in me? Come on, Sylvain frowned. Well, you've been doing something down here, Felix exclaimed. And this explains why you avoid my questions every time I ask you about it. The only thing I want to be doing down here is sneaking around with you. 'Kay? Can we just do that? Please? I don't want to fight. We just spent weeks apart. Is that really the first thing you want to do? Argue? Come on. I don't want to fight either. I'm sorry. Felix shook his head. I guess I'm just a little on edge, he replied. I still have the feeling you're hiding something. But I trust you enough that you'd tell me if it were something as deceitful as sneaking around with another girl. He told Sylvain, taking a few steps closer. I was worried I wasn't enough for you for a second there. He reached his arms out as if expecting a hug. Sylvain immediately walked into his arms, holding him tightly. He rested his chin on Felix's shoulder, letting out a sigh. Not enough for me? Felix, you're my everything. He moved out of the hug a little, then tipped Felix's chin up slightly with his fingers. You're the only one I've ever loved. I promise. He gazed into Felix's eyes. Felix stared at him, his face slowly growing bright red. He tensed up, as if embarrassed. He leaned forward and buried his face in Sylvain's shoulder. It's been a while. I'm sorry. I'm not used to being told things like that. Sylvain put his hand on the back of Felix's head, holding him close. Well, you better get used to it. 'Cause there's a lot more where that came from. He took a deep breath, and gently swayed with Felix in his arms, closing his eyes. "I've really missed you," Felix said, his voice muffled from being in Sylvain's sleeve. "Bad. I'm sure you could tell by the way I was acting." "Sorry about that again," he replied. "Do you think?" "Never mind." "Do I think what?" Sylvain moved away a little bit, giving Felix some room to talk so that he didn't have to be all muffled in his sleeve. He was genuinely curious about what Felix was about to say. "It's stupid." Felix sighed. "Do you think we could maybe talk to the boar about this place?" he said, taking a step backwards from Sylvain. "You want to tell Dimitri?" "Why?" Sylvain seemed confused. "I thought we were trying to keep this place, or at least the fact that we're here, a secret. Like, this is our thing." He grabbed Felix's hands. "I'm not saying we can't tell him about it, but I feel like that's a little. I don't know. I guess I just don't know why we would he cut himself off. Why? Do you like Dimitri too?" His eyes went wide in a teasing way. Felix glared at Sylvain. "Stop. You know that's not it." He sighed, then told him, "He knows about us. And I think he also has a secret relationship. Most likely with that watchdog of his." He shrugged. "Look, Dimitri and I had a talk a while back about us, and I just feel like he might appreciate it. I don't know. Whatever. It was stupid. We're not telling him." He pulled his hands away and placed them on his hips. "'Cause you're totally right. This is our place. I don't want to mess that up." Sylvain thought about what Felix said, wondering what they talked about. It sort of caught him by surprise that Felix said he might be in a secret relationship as well. He sort of didn't believe it. "Dimitri? Sneaking around with a guy? Okay, Felix, the more I think about it, the less I believe it." He let out a small chuckle. "I think he's got a thing for Ingrid." He shook his head. "But anyway, this place is ours. I mean, not literally, but we can keep it to ourselves. That way, we can't get discovered." "No way." "Right. Sorry for bringing it up. But I do have something I want to ask you," Felix said, suddenly seeming a bit nervous. He moved a little closer to Sylvain again, then turned around and moved to his right, sitting down on the bed. "And that there is." Sylvain looked at Felix, wondering what it was that he was going to say. "Are you going to ask me if we can kiss? Or something else like that?" He sat next to him, a smug look on his face. "Well, yeah, but wait, not right now." Felix shook his head. He got straight to the point. "I don't think I want to run away. You know, after we graduate," he said, looking at Sylvain again. "What?" "But, what about?" Sylvain looked at him with his brow creased, wondering what made Felix change his mind. "Where else would we go? First you don't want to run away, then you do, now you don't again. I don't understand." "No, it's not that," Felix shook his head. "I just had a talk with Dimitri. And things are looking promising. I mean, maybe we won't need to run away," he told him. "I just feel like I need to serve as a knight of Faergus. What's the point of staying in school now, if I'm not going to use any of my skills later?" He dropped his head in his hands. "Am I making any sense?" "Oh, okay." Sylvain nodded. "I mean, what you're saying makes sense. Why would we go to school here if we're not gonna use our skills?" he sighed. "I never thought about it that way. But we're learning so much here aside from fighting skills and tactics. I'm not much for book learning, but I'm certainly learning in other ways." Felix smiled slightly. "I'd be lying if I said I wasn't enjoying this school year. I am. But something about the fight the other day made me realize how weak I am." He looked back at Sylvain. "I couldn't protect you. Or Ingrid. Or Dimitri. I failed at everything I've been training to do." "Stop. Not even our house leaders could overcome those mages. We needed unimaginable power to be able to win against our enemies. Not a single person was able to stay standing during that. So don't say you're weak, because you're not. The only time you should ever feel weak is when you're watching me walk by and you get intense butterflies," Sylvain said, putting his arm around Felix. Felix chuckled again. Yeah, you've got a point there. He appreciated how Sylvian was always able to lighten the mood. He smiled, leaning his head on Sylvain's shoulder. So, we came down here for a reason, right? MHM. You hear that? Sylvain waited, but it was quiet. Exactly. You don't hear anything. Nobody around to catch us, nobody around to interrupt us. Now come on, I've been dying for this moment ever since we broke up. Actually, technically, before that. We have plenty of time before either of us have to be anywhere. Honestly, we have the whole night. There's no place I'd rather be than. He moved closer to Felix, brushing against him. Right. Here. Felix smiled, looking up at him lovingly. God, I've missed you. He tackled him in a hug, knocking him over flat onto the bed. He didn't waste a moment before kissing him passionately. Chapter 64, Calm Before the Storm. Meanwhile, there was a knock on Ash's door. Ash was combing his hair, looking into his mirror. His lip was quivering, as he was thinking about the horrors that he and his friends had to face earlier in the day. He turned his head around and sweetly said, "It's open." Ignatz peeked his head in. Ash. He stepped inside. "Hello. I have something for you." There was a shy smile on his face. "Oh. Hello there, Ignatz. I'm so glad to see you." Ash's face lit up. He walked over and opened the door wider. Come in," he said, a welcoming tone to his voice. Ignatz held out a canvas towards Ash. "I hope this is satisfactory. I added a few things. I hope you don't mind." It was a portrait of Ash, Annette, and Mercedes laying face up in a flower field. A small puppy was curled up with its head resting on Ash's arm. "Do you like it?" Ash put his hand up to his mouth, and his eyes brimmed with shining tears of joy. "Oh Ignatz. Ignatz, this is remarkable. So beautifully remarkable. Thank you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart." He took the canvas and observed it, so emotionally overcome. He set it down against the desk leaning up, then gave Ignatz a big hug. "Truly? You like it?" Ignatz chuckled, squeezing Ash back in return. "I'm overjoyed to hear that." He pushed his glasses up with his thumb as he pulled away sheepishly from the hug. "I'm so happy you like it." "Like it? Oh no, Ignatz. No. I don't just like it, I love it." Ash held up the painting and tilted his head in adoration. "Oh ah. I can't wait to show this to my friends." "Of course. Let me know their reactions as soon as they see it." Ignatz said, "But I actually have a date to get ready for. If you'll excuse me." "A date?" Ash's eyes sparkled a little bit, so happy for his friend. "I hope it goes splendidly." "I'm sure it will. You are just a downright kind and genuine soul. See you later, my friend." He smiled and waved. He thought Ignatz was so nice and just needed to always remind him. "I hope it goes well too, Ash. It was a pleasure talking to you." Ignatz smiled and waved as well. He backed out of the room and left. Then, there was a knock on Casper's door. Casper was at his desk, looking down at a sheet of paper. Linhard was in there with him, looking over his shoulder. "Okay," Linhard said, "what's 7 times 7? Casper stared at the homework. 35. He started writing it down. "No, stop. That's not it." "Yes it is." "Casper, I know for a fact that it's not." "Use the method I taught you," Linhard said. Casper whined. "That's not how the professor showed us how to do it." "It still works. If I have 7, let's say, books, and I sort them into 7 groups of 7 and combine them, how many do I have?" Linhard prompted. Casper tipped back in his chair. 25. "You're just guessing." 24. 23. Casper shouted. "No. Casper, slow down and." "This is stupid, I don't know." Casper threw his pencil down, but then heard the knock on the door. He got up and answered it. "Hello." Hilda was standing there. She had tears on her cheeks, and her face was all red with emotion. "See Casper. I'm sorry. Claude was busy and I need someone to talk to. She sniffled. Hey Hilda. My dynamite gal. I'm always whoa. Okay, what's going on here? You okay? Casper frowned, not really knowing what to do. Linhard said, she's clearly upset, Casper. Maybe you should try and console her. She's reaching out to you for help, so you better do your best. I think this may be my cue to leave. Teaching you arithmetic is exhausting. I think I'm going to take a nap. He walked out, hoping that Hilda was okay. I am sorry Linhard. Hilda said, I didn't mean to cut your time short. She stepped inside. Casper let her in, then closed the door. Don't cry. Here, want this. He opened his drawer and offered her a frizzy rag that was falling apart and had some weird stains on it. What is that? I don't want that. It made Hilda cry harder. Sorry. Don't look at it. I thought you could wipe your eyes with it. Casper flung it over his shoulder, and it landed who knows where. Wanna arm wrestle to help get your emotions out? He rolled up his sleeve, but then walked over to his bedside table and opened the drawer. He pulled out a mint. Mint. He held it out to her, wondering if she might like it, then paused. Want a hug? He opened his arms. I want a hug. Hilda wailed, running into his arms, almost knocking them both to the ground. Ever since we got back from the battle I've been a mess. She cried. You weren't there, I know, but I just can't keep my emotions in check. Casper suddenly calmed down, his heart sinking. He caught her, steadying his feet so that they didn't fall. He gave her a huge squeeze. Hilda. I heard all about what happened. And I swear I was gonna go see you, but Linhard came over and was tutoring me and I didn't have the time to. I swear I was gonna. On my life. He said, if I was there I would have beat up those guys who beat you up. It's okay Casper. I think maybe a good cry is just all I need. She whimpered, pulling away slightly. It was awful, being so close to death. She shook her head. And even worse, Marianne's attacker was the one targeting me. She sniffled. That does it. I gotta take this person out. Casper raised his voice. Nobody lays a finger on you or your friends without going through me first. Let me at him, Hilda. Let me at him. He put his hands on her shoulders. Hilda smiled slightly at his challenge. Heh. I knew I could count on you, Casper. She sighed deeply, wiping her eyes with the heel of her hand. If only we knew where the mages escaped to. We only took out about half of them. And their leader. She said, all I know is that dash. She was cut off by a scream that came from near the classrooms. What was that? Hilda looked at him fearfully. Whoa. Okay, what was that? Casper reflexively pulled her closer to him like he was protecting her when the scream sounded, but then he let go and grabbed an axe that was leaning up against the wall near his door. Do you think someone's in trouble? Should we go check? He asked her what they should do, but he was already running out the door. Hilda secretly loved it when he pulled her towards him, but didn't have time to think about that. Stay close, Casper. She chased after him, holding onto the back of his shirt, since she didn't have a weapon. There were dark mages scattered throughout Gareg Mach. Gareg Mach was under attack. Chapter 65, Attack at the Monastery. You've gotta be kidding me, now. Just after you got back. Come on. Casper stomped his foot. Hilda, stay close. I don't want them getting to you. You've gone through enough today. He stood protectively in front of her, gripping his weapon tightly. He ran straight for a mage and swung down hard, hoping to cut them down in one go. Where are they coming from? Seriously. What is this? Rhea took notice immediately, and instructed the knights to go and help fight. The rest of the students began to take notice as well, including Flane, who decided to take part in the fight. Hilda stayed as close as possible to Casper. I don't have a weapon, she said. Casper made sure that none of the mages got to Hilda. You're okay. You're alright. Just stay by me, 'kay? These guys are a piece of cake. Hi-ya. He chopped one in the knees, and they fell over. Seath was going absolutely insane looking for Flame amongst the chaos. Flame! Flame, where are you? He fought his way through a horde as he tried getting to the stables. Brother! Flame ran up to him. I am here. She gasped. Please, look out. She cast a ball of magic at a mage that was chasing Seath. There you are. Seath ran to meet her as she approached him, thankful for her defense. I appreciate you looking out for me, but you need to hide. Now. He desperately pointed to a hallway. The knights will escort you away. Come now. He started pulling her along, but a mage cast magic and it caused the archway to crumble, blocking their path. No, we'll have to find another way. Follow me, Flame. He went the other way, wanting to reach his wyvern. Flame screamed when the rebel fell. Oh. This is not good. We cannot allow Gareg Mach to fall. She exclaimed, chasing after Seath. Let me hide, then. You can fight. I will hide here in the stables. The stables? Flame, this area is highly exposed. You'd be vulnerable here. We have to get you to Lady Ria's quarters on the 3rd floor. You'll be safe there. Seath noticed a group of mages running into the stables. We're too late, there no. The mages emerged, and one of them was riding Seath's wyvern. It realized the rider was unfamiliar, so it started thrashing about. The mage kicked it with his spurs and hit it to make it obey, which made Seath angry. How unsavory, Seath grumbled. Oh dear. Your wyvern. Flame tugged on his arm. We need to help him. She exclaimed. She sent some fire magic at the rider, attempting to knock him off. The magic hit Seath's mount in the neck, making him screech. Seath gasped. No. It's too risky. Especially for you need to hide. There must be an easier way to get you to the safe point. An assassin crept up on them, but Seath was too sharp. Look out. He held his axe up to parry the attack, knocking his pursuer over. He jabbed him in the stomach, then turned around just in time, jumping in front of Flame to block some Thoron. He was racked with a huge jolt, but it at least didn't hit Flame. And no! Flame exclaimed. Stop! She closed her eyes tightly, holding her hands out in front of her. A bubble shield enclosed her and Seath. She was breathing heavily, as if it was hard for her to do. Flame, don't hurt yourself. The more you use your abilities, the more tired you'll become. Please, cease this at once. Seath shakily rose to his feet, his wyvern dive-bombed the barrier. No. I will not let them hurt you. Flame opened her eyes. The shield cracked a tiny bit. The mages surrounded the bubble, hitting it with attack after attack. This shield isn't going to hold up much longer, you're going to have to dispel this magic if you want to keep your strength up. Seath looked at the cracks in the shield, and the wyvern rammed it again. After that, a mage charged up a powerful blast of Ragnarok and sent it crashing toward them. Seath instinctively jumped to Flame and took her in his arms to protect her. Flame screamed as the shield shattered to pieces. As it broke, a huge ring of light dispersed across the entire church. It evaporated every single dark mage that it touched. Hilda looked at Casper after the light surged through the monastery. Whoa! What just happened? They're gone. What the hell? Casper swung his axe, but he only caught the air with it, looking around. You saw all that, right? He looked at Hilda. Yes. Hilda looked at him. That was really scary. Thank you for looking out for me, she said, grabbing his arm. You're welcome. I'm glad you're not hurt. I was worried there for a second. I was starting to get swamped. Casper flexed when she held onto his arm to show off. Hilda laughed. Come on Casper, let's make some rounds and make sure everyone's alright, okay? Hilda asked. Casper looked to the left, noticing Linhard lying motionless on the ground. Ah! Oh my god, Linhard! He ran for his friend, falling on the ground next to him. He called Hilda. Help! Linhard sat up, completely fine. They attacked while I was trying to catch a nap in the quad, so I just decided to play dead, and it worked. They left me alone, and I didn't have to fight. I'd say it worked out great. Casper hit his arm. You tricked me. Don't do that. He stood up, then turned back to Hilda. False alarm. He made an X with his arms. Hilda gasped. What the Linhard? She scurried over. That was, actually really smart. I wish I'd thought of that. She put her hands on her hips. You looked, really dead. That was the point. Linhard stood up, brushing off his clothes. I need to get inside, the stench of battle is making me sick. All the smoke, the blood, he gagged. I suddenly feel nauseous. Oh. Hilda placed her hand on his back. Let's get you somewhere away from here, okay? Come on, Casper. She gently began leading Linhard towards the dorms. Casper followed Hilda and Linhard, walking with his axe slung over his shoulder. Oh wait. I just remembered. 21. He exclaimed. Linhard was so confused. Huh. 7 times 7. Casper said as they headed inside. Hilda gasped and clapped her hands. Yay, Casper. Good job. That's a tricky one, huh? She said as they walked, even though the answer was definitely not right. Seath gripped onto Flame tightly as hot air swirled all around them, sending embers billowing into the air. Chunks of debris rained down around them as the magic erupted, but the ring of light took care of any other dangers around them. Once it was done, Seath very slowly and cautiously loosened his grip on Flame. Flame, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Flame's arm fell limp off to the side of her body, unmoving. Her eyes were closed, and her lips were parted slightly. Seath shook his head. No, 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 no. Flame, look at me, open your eyes, Flame. He gently shook her shoulder, then gently stroked her cheek with his finger in an attempt to gently wake her. He was afraid that he had lost her. Open your eyes, please. His voice shook, and his face was pale with worry. His wyvern was laying on the ground beside him, letting out wheezing breaths. He had fallen on top of a pointed rock, and was making little hurt noises. Still, Flame didn't move. She was breathing steadily, her chest rising and falling with even breaths. Seath let out a huge sigh of relief when he noticed her breathing. Ah, she's asleep. He cradled her as he sat amongst the ruin. Did she? He looked around, stunned, then looked back at her. His wyvern nudged his arm with his head, then sniffed Flame, giving her a tiny nibble of affection. Seath moved her away a little bit so his teeth wouldn't scratch her, but then noticed a giant blood puddle forming around his mount. Seath. Catherine was behind him. Hey, are you alright? Do you need anything? She asked. Seath placed one hand on his wyvern's snout as it took its final breath, and he looked at it with set eyes. He sighed, letting his arm drop as he held Flame. When Catherine arrived, he slowly turned and looked up at her. Flame needs medical attention. Immediately. Your wyvern, Catherine shook her head. Never mind, we have more important matters at hand. What happened to Flame? Was she the one who dispelled the mages? She asked. Seath sadly looked down at Flame, trying to conceal the look of surprise on his face when Catherine asked if Flame was the one who got rid of the mages. He wondered how Catherine knew. He tried to cover it up. It must have been the work of the Archbishop, or a miracle bestowed to us by the goddess above. He looked at the sky. Yes. I thought it was Lady Rhea as well, Catherine told him. But enough of that, let's get her to the infirmary. Can you walk? Do you need me to take your sister? No. Seath didn't mean to sound so defensive, so he cleared his throat and calmed himself. No. I've got her. He held her like a baby as he stood up. But she needs medical attention. She suffered an injury that rendered her unconscious. We were attacked with explosive magic, and a projectile must have knocked into her. Ah, that's not good, Catherine said, walking with him towards the infirmary. This attack, it must have been those who slither in the dark. I mean, right? Who else could it have been? There's no other explanation. They must have been retaliating due to the events of this morning. Seath hurried to the medical wing, making sure Flame was wholly supported. I can't believe our security was breached so easily. I agree. I think after this morning, everyone just loosened up a bit. But that's not an excuse. We need to do better in the future, Catherine said with a small sigh. When they entered, a nurse made his way over to Seath and held his arms out. May I have her? Part of this was my fault, as Lady Ria's advisor. It is my duty to provide my protection to the monastery, and I failed. Seath stepped through the doors, and as soon as the nurse reached out to him, he turned away slightly as if to shield Flame from him. No. I request a female nurse to see to her. As a force of habit, he gave the man an intimidating stare. What? I'm sorry, but I'm just doing my job, sir, the nurse said, seeming offended. Catherine gave Seath a look of confusion. A few moments later, another nurse came by. As requested, I will take her instead. We will have a full female team to look over her, she assured him. My thanks. Seath said to the new nurse, but he was still hesitant to hand her over. Instead of letting them take her from him, he walked over to their station and laid her down on a hospital bed, remaining at her bedside. He looked down at her, worried beyond words. The nurses monitored Flame's vitals for a while, and checked for responses. For a moment, the nurses became frantic, writing things down and scurrying around the hospital. The nurse who took Flame looked up at Seath. It appears as if she is in some sort of coma, she told him. Seath stepped back to let them work, but kept an eye on Flame the whole time. He paced nervously for a while, but stopped when they noticed how frantic they were. He met back up with the nurse when she turned around, looking extremely worried. Hey, what? He breathed, looking at Flame and then back at the nurse. A coma, he frowned, leaning over the bed. He put his hand on Flame's forehead, gingerly moving some hair away from her face. Flame, why? He spoke quietly, then said to the medic, you will find a way to bring her out of this. He sounded on the brink of breaking down. We can do our best, sir, she told him. We have never seen this before. This strange, hypersleep, what exactly caused it? She asked, taking a pencil from behind her ear and readying her clipboard. Seath closed his eyes, letting out a sigh, then opened them again as he answered. The cause is beyond me, it must have been due to an enemy's attack. I thought she may have been hit on the head, but, perhaps the mages used some sort of spell on her. He tried to avoid giving away any crucial information. Yes. She is free of any abrasions or injuries. A spell could possibly be the cause. This case, it is beyond us, she said, sounding worried. I promise, we will do all we can to help her. Catherine spoke. Seath. I'm so sorry, this is awful. My efforts will not be wasted on anything else until we find a way to help her. Seath closed his eyes again, trying to keep composure. He let out another sigh before looking at Catherine. It is nothing you have to apologize for, but I appreciate the condolences. If anything, I'm the one who should be sorry. The nurses nodded. We will keep her alive while she is in this state. For now, she needs rest. The nurses dispersed. Catherine sighed. What are you apologizing for, Seath? My failure to keep her safe. It is mostly an apology to her, Seath frowned. I am beside myself at the moment. I do apologize. I am having great difficulty keeping it together. He cleared his throat in an attempt to keep himself from sounding on the verge of tears. Woha, you have every right to be emotional right now. You hear me? That's your baby sister. Any normal man would be beside themselves in this situation. I suppose you have a point. A single tear escaped his eye, but he dabbed it away with his hand before it could get anywhere. No more tears followed. However, I must maintain my composure in order to keep a level head. I'm going to go report everything to Lady Ria, Catherine said. You can come along if you'd like, but I don't blame you if you want to stay here for the time being. She began to slowly walk towards the door. I will remain by Flame's side. And I will not leave until she has risen. Seath stooped down at her bedside and took Flame by the hand. Before Catherine could leave, he said to her, "Thank you for your support." Catherine gave him a sad smile before exiting the infirmary. She reported to Ria immediately, letting her know about what Flame was going through, and asking her about the attack that saved everyone. Ria said it wasn't her, it must have been the goddess, just like Seath had said. Check the description for the links to the author.